Hello, and welcome to Realms Beyond. This is part 2 of my class section of this series of videos, so if you want to watch part 1, just take a look at the previous video to this one. So today, let's take a look at the final 3 classes that I didn't go over last time, which is the Ranger, Rogue, and Wizard. So the Ranger has a moderate amount of hit dice and a decent number of skills. I mentioned before that the Barbarian had the most skill points. The Ranger does have more, but I don't consider it a fighting class because it does so many other things better than fighting. So it certainly has a lot of proficiencies, except for medium and heavy armor, and tower shields, and exotic weapons. It does have a favorite enemy, which is really useful in certain areas, so you must select your favorite enemy carefully. Tracking, wild empathy, these are really useful when what you're trying to do is find your prey and speak to the wild around you in order to do that. So you're in your element in the wild, and when there are animals around. You get a combat style, archery and 2-weapon combat. Archery gives you the many shot for free, and 2-weapon combat gives you, well, the 2-weapon fighting for free. So it depends on what you want. I think I'd recommend archery only because you can take point blank and precise shot early, but that doesn't overlap with what this gives you, which is many shot. So that's really nice. And then there's improvements to the style. You can get more stuff, basically. And then mastery, which gives you even more stuff. So I think that can be very useful. Camouflage, stealth, they just get lots of different little things. It makes them really useful in many different situations. Plus, they're a very large number of skill points. But what about who they are? So in Cormac, it's definitely about the wilderness, identifying plants, animal skins, a woodsman in many ways. Let's see, do they have a ranger? Yes. So in this case, from Finland, they offer themselves as guides in the wilderness. To bounty hunters and other people that need to navigate it. So that they're probably an entire profession here, rather than just a woodsman. So the differences here are that it's much more wild, and therefore their experiences are even more desirable. So that's very interesting. It's a minor difference, of course. And of course, the goddess of the hunt. See, this is the kind of difference that I really like seeing. So it's not just clerics that get divine magic. There are at least 4 classes. There's the paladin, cleric, ranger, and druid. So they could very easily change it up between just the 4 of those, much less even more later on, perhaps. Which is all really cool. I mean, when they add monks to the game, maybe, then they'll probably add even more options for, oh, you follow this philosophy or this tradition or this god. again, this is all very interesting. So in this case, the difference here is that you're part of a cult, devotee of Ferenia. You're not just a woodsman. You're a wanderer who actually is devoted to a tradition. Such time manifested itself in a martial manner, the would-be woodsman transforming into a crafty hunter and devotee of Ferenia, the goddess of the hunt. See, this is great. Being a ranger in Ferenia means that you're actually part of a cult, or at least nominally so. So it's pretty nice. Let's see, they have they have them here. Yeah, let's change the name. And of course, the climb makes a big difference in what a ranger feels like. Nomadic tribes, going from oasis to oasis, the desert, the tracks of small animals that roam the hostile environments, the lizards and scorpions. You're essentially a nomad, not a woodsman, not a tracker necessarily, although you certainly can do it, but just the differences in flavor and how you enjoy the tranquility of life far from civilization. See, this is not something you see in the other ones. It's just, this is the kind of thing that helps you roleplay your character. Now, maybe they're not going to add every little detail into the choice-based mechanisms of the game, but it's still a guide for you to say, I don't like this city guy. He's probably trying to pull one up on me. So I'm just going to refuse his offer. Instead of maybe a woodsman from Cormac being like, you know, I could really use some funds here. I guess I'll sell the skins to this merchant. That kind of difference. You know, the kind of thing that helps you decide what to do instead of deciding based on your own intellect, so to speak. You're doing it based on your character's understanding of the world. This is really useful to do that. You can read this and be like, okay, this is how I should act, and this is how I'll play, and it would be very interesting to find out what that outcome is. Okay, Shent also has a ranger. Everyone has a ranger. And they have full descriptions, too, in each of them. There wasn't one missing. So they're in the wildlands right now. The sacred ibis bird. Okay. See, I'm suspecting now that that's going to come into play, because the ibis is a sacred animal. Animals are generally quite sacred in real-life Egyptian history. So that's definitely probably, well, it comes up here. It's probably going to come up under the druid, too. So just some very nice stuff. Crocodile animal companions definitely makes sense in this setting, at least. Those are just some examples. It's not written here that they have crocodile companions, although they might. Reading the land. Yeah, just really cool stuff. So that's the ranger. Now let's do the rogue. So the rogue gets the most skill points. Not very good hit die. Better than the wizard, but really low. Selection of weapons, light armor, no shields. Sneak attack, that's everything to the rogue. Some enemies are immune to sneak attack, so it's not as good as you might think. Not like other editions of D&D and Pathfinder, for example, where it's much more common. It's harder to get sneak attack to stick, because like undead are not affected, constructs are not affected, elementals are not affected, things like that. Trap finding, you need it for that. You could just circumvent traps or Like use the barbarian, for example, to just power through them, or the monk, and it becomes available. But still, it's hard. Evasion, trap sense, also like the barbarian. Uncanny dodge, also like the barbarian, and the line there. And then just a large number of special abilities, which help you in evasion-style combat and skills in combat. So, the Royal Road. Roadside taverns. They're a thing. That's what this tells you. Picking locks. Break-ins, forgeries, criminality. They're definitely seen in the criminal manner. But what about Vinland? Have rogues? Yes, they do. Manners of the rich, valuable treasures, so treasure seekers. Nimble fingers, soft souls. High challenges. This one doesn't have a mentor. It's definitely a little different there. But the rich still exist. So they're still really much a criminal. Let's take a look at Perinean. Trigera. Walled poverty. Very interesting idea here. Joining a gang. I wonder what that entails. But then, of course, having to flee because, well, you don't get to start in a gang. But still interesting. I wonder if they're also essentially a cult too, just in a different kind of way. Because this is Perinean we're talking about. And of course, in the land of pleasure and religion, there would definitely be those on the street. Steal from the temple and then flee it. Very funny. Interesting. The temples are apparently quite rich and effective. That's what this tells you. This tells you the other side of that story. And of course, neither the Sentian homeland nor the settlements in Wildland offer any future for her. Looking for other opportunities. So what does this tell you? This tells you that thievery doesn't work there, or it's not very lucrative. So they probably actually just have less of it, or they're so unified or homogenized that they don't, or it's culturally stigmatized to the point where even those that consider it just give it up. Or they flee. Very interesting indeed. Alright, now finally, the wizard. Lowest hit die, and also low skill points, although intelligence is their favored stats, so that's going to be high anyway. They can't wield much. They have the sorcerer proficiency, so all simple weapons. They have their familiars. Their scribing scroll. We don't know if they'll keep that. They've discussed whether or not they should just get that. It depends on how they do item creation. And of course, bonus feats like the fighter, although less often, but still useful. It's really the spells. That's what you take it for. So wizards do live in towers in Cormac. I wonder how that interacts with the superstitious people there. Maybe the towers insulate them. That makes sense, actually. General distrust toward mages. Yep. Yep, very nice. No wizards. No wizards. Let's see. Your Handi Guild. There's a full guild. That's definitely a different feeling. Apprenticeships, masters. Alchemy. So they have a name for themselves. They are Handi, not wizard. Another one of those wonderful terms that they get to use for themselves, not have to call themselves wizards like the Celtics in real history might. Fascinating. Let's look at... Yep, they have them here too. The High Art of Magic. High art. See, that reminds me of Hermeticism, which of course has its origins in Egypt, so that just makes sense. Arcane Library. This is obviously a reference to the mysterious and legendary libraries of Africa, such as Timbuktu, for example. Yep, unlocking the arcane secrets. Full arcane libraries. And I imagine that Thoth will have something to do here too. Or if they've removed that part, ancestors probably manage mysterious libraries. It's all very interesting. Again, just another cool concept that you can tie to classes. So what do you think? We've seen all of them now. They all seem very different, some better than others, but they might not be done with them and they could add more flavor. And really the idea of all this background, is in many ways to help you roleplay, as I said earlier. It's to help you make choices and give you guidance on what choices your character would be making, so that you don't always have to rely on your own choices and maybe avoid choice paralysis, because you'll be like, well, yes, of course, this character of mine would make this choice, and so forth and so on. So again, very interesting. And of course the various, you might have noticed that the background, the descent also changes depending on where you're from. We're going to go over that. And we're going to take a look at these as well. But that's in the next video. So thank you very much for watching. See you next time in the next video.